I think you knew about Moseley Bog before I did.
There was a wonderful meeting, I remember, in the upstairs room of the Co-op, and Joy Pfeiffer spoke. She, in 2 or 3 minutes, just had such an emotional impact on people. She was in bits about the fact that this wild bit of inner city Birmingham was threatened with a housing scheme. And that kind of gave us a real focus, actually, to say, yeah, we need to be a campaigning organisation. We need to get through to the planning officers. We need to get through to the people on the planning committee. And then we won. I mean, that was the miracle.
Yeah, that's right. And it's still a nature reserve today.
Yeah.
Well, there were sites under threat, like Queswick Quarry and Moseley Bog.
Yeah. And I think the magic was that actually suddenly people who'd never really talked to one another before came together around that passion to get the idea that there was wildlife living in towns recognised and that it mattered to people. And so having naturalists like you, mainstream naturalists, and landscape people like me, and a lot of teachers in education as well, all coming together saying, why is nobody realising how important this is in an urban society like ours?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And people like me that had only ever lived in the conurbation had no idea that wildlife was only supposed to be in the countryside.
And that was the attitude, wasn't
Yes,
it?
I mean, that was a real shock.
Do you remember we had a campaign to recruit supporters at New Street Station?
We did.
And they could become a supporter for life.
For 50p.
Yeah, fantastic. So everybody who got off the train was saying, 50p for life, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And they got a badge and we got their postcode. So it was a very, very different approach to nature conservation, which of course now is kind of mainstream.
Yeah. Wildlife isn't about going out on day trips into the countryside or abroad. It can be. But it's about the nature on people's doorsteps, everyday wildlife, the birds singing in the garden, and the joy they get and the benefits they get to both the mental and physical health of having places that are wildlife rich right on their doorsteps.
And I think people didn't need persuading of that, they just needed reminding about it. But actually the powers that be needed facts. And that was part of the key to this early success, that we had these professional staff who were able to go out and do the ecological surveys. They could do the mapping of the corridor systems along the canal and discover that there were more species of dragonfly in the middle of Dudley on the canals than there were out in farming Shropshire. The West Midlands, the Black Country, is an astonishing landscape. And I think we were also tapping into the whole nostalgia thing, the history thing. A lot of the landscapes that we were enthusing about, trying to protect, to talk to people about, were landscapes that were absolutely at the heart of the history of the Black Country. Yeah. And that kind of overlap between natural history, social history, industrial history, that was, again, a dimension to nature conservation that really hadn't happened in the countryside. We're an urban society, 90% of us live in towns and cities or in big villages. So the idea that nature on the doorstep is something that happens out in the rural countryside is crazy. It has to happen on the doorstep, in the garden, in the school grounds. And if you can have access daily to the sound of the birds singing, if you can see that it's different in the autumn from the spring, then you're going to be enjoying it, but you're also much more likely to be concerned about the loss of the wider countryside. So it begins in towns and cities, and we were part of that revolution that really kick-started that whole movement.
At the end of the day, we all rely on the natural world for our survival and for our health and so on. And so wildlife in urban areas is a daily reminder, really, of how important the natural world is to human welfare, and also how important it is that humans look after wildlife's welfare, because it's mutually beneficial. We're enlightened self-interest, that's the expression, isn't it? So it helps us to understand that we have to look after wildlife, because at the end of the day, wildlife looks after us.